If they're in front of a resident, that's 24/7. Also, I'd like to point out that the FCC testing that was done in 1996, that was not done with pulse code modulation in mind, and that's what we have today. And so a lot of energy can be put into a single spike over a given amount of time, and you can come up with the same amount of power, although that spike could have consequences that hasn't been included in that testing, although I think a lot of other institutions and academic studies have shown that there is an issue there. Also, you know, occupational RF, there's time limits on that, so I know that wasn't brought out today. And I also like to point out that Mr. Hammond, who I know, is also a consultant to Verizon. So just thought I'd throw that out there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Brian Powell, followed by Martha Glazer.
So there's only a few things that can make people sick: poor mental state, poor nutrition, and poor environment. We can give an individual the best food on the planet and teach them to vibrate and think better than anyone around, but if you stick them in a microwave and spray them with pesticide, they'll get sick anyway. We need to stop this madness. This equipment was designed in the past for a specific reason. It's still the reason why it's being used. This isn't my knowledge. This is what's, you go ahead and read back in history what this stuff was used for. This is a weapon, and we're under attack. My son's 12 years old, and he won't see his future if we don't stand up and stop this madness. The individuals you see here are part of the problem. We need to come together and stop coming into these meetings and complaining about it with each other. We need to stand up and fight. We need to get every man and every woman that can stand and fight and get our town back and our country back. We've lost control. We've lost control of what's important, and it's time to get it back. It has nothing to do with cell phone towers. These devices have been making people sick since they put them in my neighborhood in the early 80s. I have so much information about what's been taking place. My family's been here for over 100 years. We didn't have this mess until we started putting these. We lost the bees, the butterflies, and they started saying, oh, the oak tree, sudden death oak. No, it's the same thing. All living things are affected by radiation. It's destroying everything at a cellular level. It makes you weak. It doesn't give you cancer. It makes you susceptible to any and everything. The young and the old and the compromised are the most susceptible. This is madness. We're under attack. These people are attacking us. They're allowing people to destroy our future, and we're standing and allowing it to happen. Enough of this madness. Time to stand up and stop this. Get all the people that you know around and stand up and take these goddamn things down. Stop the government destroying our sons, our children's future. We have no shot. If we don't stand up soon, we're going to be destroyed. These are weapons. This is what they were made for, and this is what they're being used for. It's never been any different. Go ahead and do your research, read in history. Go back to the Cold War. Understand what you're talking about in here. Understand what it's been doing. Understand the effects. You apparently don't, because no one on city council, we need to start learning to elect individuals that have qualifications, because we keep electing individuals to council that aren't qualified to govern our safety of our communities because they don't know anything about what's going on. It's time for change. This issue has nothing to do with cell phone towers. It's time to get our country back and start here with our community. We need to do this now. We have no time to waste. If we don't stand up soon, there's going to be no hope for our children's future.
Tavares, followed by Mark Sullivan.
Deborah Tavares, and I run the website stopthecrime.net. I am a researcher, a journalist, an investigative reporter, and I'm on radio shows all over the world. On stopthecrime.net, we have much information about this 5G apocalypse, and that's what this is. This is a silent weapons system of death. Make no mistake. This is a genocide plan. We know that. We know that. We look at the Deagle.com website and we understand the percentage of reduction of population by 2025 in the United States. But I shan't digress, because certainly we all must understand this is an illusion of public input right now. This is a corporation. Santa Rosa is a corporation. They are in lockstep with all of the executive orders. that run this country, including the executive order on January 18th of 2018 requiring the expeditious rollout of broadband AK 5G throughout this country, over Indian tribal lands, to every corner of this country, everywhere, everywhere. Also, the executive order of the expeditious rollout of AI. This is where we are heading. Massive data collection and a digital reality. This is what this foundation is all about. We are heading towards a digital everything, the Internet of Things. Let's get now to the battery backups of the grid. Battery backups are run on lithium-ion batteries. They explode, they degrade rapidly, and they are like shrapnel. Did you know that? These are going to be our backup batteries throughout this city, everywhere actually. Solar as well, which is a weapon. But it's most important to understand that this is an illusion of representation, because we are a corporate structure. The United States is a corporate network of agencies run by the United Nations, the international bankers, and the IMF. This is a silent weapons attack. And there's a document that all of you should read if you haven't, called Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars. Have any of you heard about the smart nodes being deployed in Lancaster, California right now? If you haven't, you should. It's on the street lights. It's gonna come here too. It is creating the Internet of Things where you walk out and you say Uber and it arrives without a cell phone in your hand. That's where we are going rapidly.
Thank you. Mark Sullivan, followed by Peter Turnoff.
Another aspect of the telecom industry, they have no insurance against lawsuits for damage. So in this position, the city might be opening itself up to tremendous lawsuits that will affect all of us down the road, as we witnessed by the amount of damage that is evident from this technology. So go forth and do well.
Thank you. Peter Chernoff, followed by Noah Davidson.
I am Peter. I am here speaking truth to power, free of all fear. Deborah Tavares, stopthecrime.net. It's worth looking at. She's telling the truth. And the young man that was in this spot earlier who said to take our country back was absolutely right, but the question is, how do we do that? Well, first, you got to understand this. We're under martial law since the 1947 National Security Act, which basically says you all are slaves. And this guy down here, he's not asking them to do this, he's telling them to do this. He's like the head of a pedophile organization that comes to town that's gonna rape all your kids, but he's gonna ask them nicely to do it first. They do not have the power that you think they have, which is why I am commanding you to general strike this system into submission, starting now with a total economic strike. I tie prophecies together. Black Elk, prophecy of the power of the wind, when it's returned back to the people, will be in the midst of the greatest of changes. Ties into Ephesians. We fight not against flesh and blood, but against the powers and principalities of the air. That's what you're looking at. I trust a former Sheriff Watson from Alameda, who was an expert and brilliant, and having authored a book on the very radionics and frequencies, verifying that this technology is military application and it also has the ability to go to lethal force. And before this sheriff became a sheriff, he created the first radio dispatch technology for law enforcement. This was in the 1930s. His son put up all the 19 major radio towers on the mountaintops of California afterwards. I think he knew a little bit more than what we're being told. This military tech is an initial step to additional upgrades with satellite interfaces, all brought to you by the military industrial complex with the United Nations, Agenda 21, FEMA, and their cohorts which rule over them. So how do we fight this? Well, you see, the firefighters and the police department, they're kind of like in the middle of a satanic riddle. And the answer is with us. So we shut down, by prophecy, the 40-day strike, shut down the entire West Coast for 40 days and 40 nights, and the U.S. Constitution is, for the first time ever, released out of the prison cell of Leonard Peltier, who's been down 44 years. Now the whole world walks a true trial of tears, and law enforcement works for us first time ever, and this kind of shit goes away immediately. And so, I am here speaking truth to power of fear. I am commanding you to join this strike. No labor, no schools, no longer they're fools. You're all off the fence, no mortgages, no rents, and get ready to put a party together to welcome home some of our most well-known political prisoners that have been in, that are known, and that's Leonard Peltier.
Assistant administrator down there that was speaking earlier. I think he's sincere. But you know, a lot of people were sincere believing in Vietnam. A lot of people were sincere in believing in invading Iraq, for example, for just a couple of the things that we've gotten on the bandwagon for when we really weren't ready for them. This is one of them. One of the reasons is the whole theoretical basis for putting these small cells up close together is because the short wavelengths require that. But instead, they're putting 4G in, which penetrates much more deeply. This is very dangerous. It's a very dangerous thing to have 4G penetrating like that. That is discussed here. Of all the things that you could read, please read, and it's mentioned in here, it's sourced in here, you can find it electronically, The Nation magazine, How Big Wireless Convinced Us That Cell Phones Are Safe, which shows that Dr. Carlo's epidemiological studies in the late 90s showed the carcinogenic characteristics of this wavelength, these wavelengths collectively, which of course, by the way, here's the core point. Talking about Mr. Hammond, and I'll be happy to debate with Mr. Hammond anytime. The reality is, his entire dialogue, and that entire dialogue is based on a false premise, and that is that the thermal standard is the one that matters. How do we know that that's false? Because the National Institutes of Health National Toxicology Program on May 27th, 2016, on March 18th, 2018, and its final report on November 2nd, 2018, stated that the mechanism of the cancer causation, specifically the formation of glioma cells, was non-ionic. It is occurring as a result of vibration. In physics, we call this acoustic. So I wish I had more time, but I promise everyone in this room, because this is now a public record, that the things that have been said here are well-researched and thorough, and I beg you to please do the job that you've been begged upon here by all of us to do, which is really please look at the science. Please stop this horrible thing. Thank you.
Peter, and I'm a bit of a spiritual arsonist, and as I tried to make it clear in the other meeting that the city council, for all their good intentions, can only do so much because they are under United Nations Agenda 21, which can be verified a number of ways. So they want to do good things, but they're hampered. They're hampered because they do not have the political will that they could usually have. And the people that want to make things happen somehow are lacking the spiritual will to make things happen. I wanted to bring up the fact that, you know, there's going to be, the earthquakes are coming, you got all these fires and waters. Does the city have a couple thousand gallons of water, clean drinking water put aside, or are we going to rely on the big stores charging $10 a gallon when all these things happen, beginning this week with the earthquakes? And when I hear discussions about manufactured homes, and I see all these people homeless on the streets, and there's a lot of people that are struggling that had homes, and they're also in the streets or in campers, why is not somebody putting something together on some fairgrounds using teepees? Teepees worked for a long time. They work great. They're perfect. And so I want to finish by sharing the fact that, you know, if we all got off the fence, stopped paying mortgages and rents for 2 months, and then decided to pay 25% of what it was before, then all of a sudden we eliminate the bankers and the lawyers in this game, and a 40-day strike empowers law enforcement with the U.S. Constitution first time, and we change the entire equation. It cannot be done within the system by the system's rules. It's the United Nations, it's the usurious bankers running this whole show. These are people that want to do the right thing, and you have the power to let them do the right thing, but you have to disengage financially from the system for the 40 days, which the prophecy calls for, that sets the entire world free. I've been sharing this for 30 years. The world's walking a true trial of tears. Martin Luther King says you can't, if one person is wrongfully incarcerated, so are we all. Leonard Peltier's been down 44 years. Jamal, 39. McDonald 47, and we're sitting there worrying about ourselves. So